When we first started doing videos a few years ago, we had a few issues regarding space and also how we're going to distribute the videos for drafting purposes, approval, internal approval. So we initially gone through quite a lot of different misadventures until we finally settled down with a NAS. So let's go through our journey on how we ended up here and why we are using this NAS and also how we're using this NAS. So at the beginning, when we were doing videos, of course, the most easiest and also most accessible way is to use the free Google Drive accounts. So during that time, we were actually using my own personal Google Drive account. We had 17 gigs free, but including my own personal files, there was only like about 12 gigs left. So with that in mind, obviously that's not going to be enough because each video of ours takes like a gig average each. So we then settled down with something else, which is also Google Drive, but this is the, how should I say this? It's the unlimited education Google Drive account. It's a bit more illegally procured through those e-commerce websites. You're not supposed to use them like an enterprise kind of way, but we did anyway. It kind of breached Google's terms and conditions, those terms of usage, all of those stuff. And also there's a risk whereby Google will actually terminate that entire, should I call it a branch? It's more like a tree of accounts. So all of the branches, if they detect anything's wrong, that entire part can be chopped off the tree. So with that risk in mind, we were very anxious and also careful on how we are going to use it. But we also found out another problem is that when we were using it to sync our videos online to that illegally procured account, it will tell us that the quota has been reached and then we can't do any downloading or uploading to that Google Drive account, which is a huge problem for us. So we had to look another way. And then this NAS comes in. This is the Synology DS420 Plus. Yes, 420. This is a 4-bay NAS, and then there's also another SODIMM RAM slot. If you want to use it, you can run a lot more applications with more RAM, technically. And then there's also 2 more M.2 SSD slots for caching purposes, so you get faster read-write speeds as well. But we ended up not using those features because we don't really need them yet. We ended up only using 2 out of the 4 bays. Don't add us because that's what we have right now, and then that's how we set it up at the time. So we're now still continuously using that setup. Both of those drives are in RAID 1, so we do have data redundancy. And then the best part about the Synology NAS is that there are a lot of different apps available for you to download through their web store. We have our own Office suite running on this NAS, and then we are also able to host all of our video archives onto this NAS here. And to sync up between my local drive and also this NAS, because I'm a lazy person, I like automation with all of those things, we enabled WebDAV or WebDAV, I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce that. And through that protocol, I was able to sync my local drive with the NAS and also turned my local desktop's drive to become an offsite backup-ish kind of situation going on with the NAS. Now, Synology also has a few more different ways to sync your local drive with the NAS. I eventually did not use that because it syncs in real time, which means if I'm going to render a video directly into the drive that is to be synced with the NAS, then it will also sync all of the temporary files like all the AAC audio files and whatnot. I don't want that to happen. If they sync the temporary files as well, and then there are changes on my local drive, and then they download it back, and then they corrupt my file, it's very difficult to explain. But it's just gonna mess up everything. So eventually what I settled for is, of course, like I mentioned earlier, WebDAV, and then I also use GoodSync, one of the best apps in terms of all this file syncing, and also set a 2-minute delay. If there's no file change, then only it will start syncing. I can prevent that temporary file from syncing with the NAS drive, which also solves a lot of issues. And then for my other colleagues, if they want to watch the video draft for approval purposes, internal approval purposes, he installed a video player package from Synology, and then he's able to use the VM-like desktop experience from the Synology software and literally watch it via the browser itself, which is again hosted by this NAS right here. So with this player in mind, we can literally speed up the internal approval process because we don't have to download the file. And even when we had to download the file last time, once it's downloaded, either number one, the download failed because the connection got broken off or something like that, or number two, download it and then forget about it for a few days, and then yeah, we just forget about it. So right now, we can literally watch all of the videos on demand while streaming through this NAS, and it is still bound to our ISP speed, but yeah, it's serviceable. And now in terms of cost, I know there are some differences between a NAS and also online web hosting, like let's just say Google Drive, enterprise version, whatnot. So I am not familiar with that, so switch hosts.
So okay, now we're settled with all the technical stuff, pros and cons and everything. Now I just want to talk about a little bit on the cost of running this Synology NAS. Now earlier we did mention about we use some of those illegally procured unlimited drive. Of course, you can get those for very cheap, but if you want to go for the legal route, that means you sign up with G Suite Enterprise. Google did provide a couple of different packages. It starts from 20 ringgit per active user and up to, I'm not too sure, 60 or 80 ringgit. But I do know the one we are particularly interested is the 40 ringgit per active user. Now let us just put aside that number for the time being and look at the cost of setting up this Synology NAS. The particular we have here is the DS420 Plus, so we have 4 drive bays. So let's say we want to populate all the drive bays with 4 terabytes of hard disk each, and each of the 4 terabytes of hard disk will set you back for about 400 ringgit. That means just the drive alone you will have to spend at about 1,600 ringgit. Now the NAS unit itself is another 2,000 ringgit. That means initial costs for setup should be around 3.6k. And let's just assume that the lifespan for the hard disk is about 4 years. That means I'm expecting spending 3,600 ringgit for across this 4 years time frame. So that put us at about 1,000 ringgit per year. Let's just bring back the initial Google Enterprise that cost 40 ringgit per head. So if we have 4 staff in the office, each of the user will have to spend 40 ringgit. That means 1,920 ringgit per year. Yeah, that is per year. If we just multiply it for 4 years, that means we have to spend 8,000 ringgit for the cross 4 years, and compares with this one, for the next 4 years we can actually procure another 4 drives to replace the aging drive. And that is the number one concern for us. We just want to keep everything, the cost as low as possible. And on top of that, there is some users or people that the experts, they question about the why would you need a Synology NAS? Why don't you just build a PC? Because the NAS is technically a PC, but you can build a cheap PC using Core i3 or Intel Celeron or all those low-end chips. You can pretty much stuff as much hard drive as possible into your PC case and run FreeNAS or Unraid, and you have a NAS. For us, well, we don't really see the need of going through all the trouble because we are not really expert in setting up NAS. And on top of that, this kind of system is set up one time and we probably not going to look into the configuration ever again until when there's something wrong with it. So the learning curve for all those self-configured NAS is a little bit too steep for us. And on top of that, Synology NAS has everything we need already. Consider you just put in the drive, initialize it, or set up the RAID you want, and then yeah, install packages, whatever services you need, and that's it. And on top of that, like I mentioned earlier, if you pay for 40 ringgit for G Suite, you do get a lot of other different features and functions such as Google Drive, Google Office suites and things like that, Synology NAS, you do have the option to install the Synology Office package as well. And on top of that, you do have a lot more options for us like to do. You can even set up your own DNS server using this one. So basically, this one is more like a external storage on steroids. So you can do a lot more things with it. Of course, there is some issues that we might need to look into. For example, if you pay the premium for the G Suite, you do get the peace of mind because basically the technical part is covered by Google side. So you don't have to worry about the system downtime or any sort of a drive failure and everything like that. For building your own NAS, you are still responsible for the NAS itself and as well for the drive. That means when any issue, any drive failure or what, you still need to get a new drive and replace it. Of course, there's a downtime in between there. And besides, of course, if you are using your personal NAS like this, you are more or less bound by the location you are setting up this NAS. For example, in our case, we are putting this NAS in our office. That means we are bound to the internet connection in office as well as the power stability in the office. So that means if there's a power outage in this area in our office, we cannot access anything from our home or anywhere. But for Google, I don't think that should be an issue. Of course, last year we did have some major outage for Google, and that is a big news. So that means it is something that will not happen that often. So I think that pretty much is the reason why we go for our own NAS, because now we have control for everything, all our videos, all our video drafts and photos and files, everything. So what did you think of building your own NAS? Or would you still prefer to pay the premium price for the G Suite? Do let us know what did you think about the NAS, and I'll see you guys in the next video.